Today marks the 78th anniversary of Operation Overlord, when an army of genderqueer homosexuals stormed the beaches of Normandy and... Wait, that's not right. I need to take that again. Today marks the 78th anniversary of Operation Overlord, when an army of overweight social anxiety sufferers with two mommies stormed the beaches... Shit, that's not right either. Bear with me, I will get this thing right. Today marks the 78th anniversary of Operation Overlord, when an army of angry harpy feminists with jello-colored hair and gender studies degrees stormed the beaches of Normandy, and all the German defenders immediately fled in terror before any of them had the chance to start talking or issuing marriage proposals. You know, since it's Pride Month and everything, I figured I should do my part by rewriting the story of D-Day so that the gays and the wokesters can take all the credit for the achievement, lest the younger generations start thinking Europe was actually liberated by armies of mostly white, hetero-cisnormative Christian men. And we cannot have that, because that doesn't do anything to promote diversity and inclusion. But in seriousness, today is the 78th anniversary of the Normandy invasion, or D-Day plus 28,740 if you prefer. 13 Americans won the Medal of Honor that day on Utah and Omaha beaches, including, you might be surprised to know, the highest-ranking officer present, the only guy with stars on his collar who went in with the first attack wave, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. It is, of course, highly unorthodox in modern warfare to have a general officer, much less a divisional chief of staff as Ted Roosevelt was, directly participating in the early stages of an amphibious landing. You normally wouldn't have anybody higher ranking than a company commander in the first wave of landing craft, so captains and majors, in other words. And Roosevelt was rebuffed by his superiors 2 different times when he made the request. And rather than taking no for an answer, he circumvented the chain of command and wrote the following directly to General Eisenhower, Supreme Commander, Allied Expeditionary Force. Quote, "The force and skill with which the first elements hit the beach and proceed may determine the ultimate success of the operation. With troops engaged for the first time, the behavior pattern of all is apt to be set by those first engagements. It is considered that accurate information of the existing situation should be available for each succeeding element as it lands. You should have, when you get to shore, an overall picture in place in which you can place confidence. I believe I can contribute materially on all of the above by going in with the assault companies. Furthermore, I personally know both officers and men of these advanced units and believe that it will steady them to know that I am with them," close quote. And eventually Ike decides, you know what, if this guy wants to get himself killed on Utah Beach, I'm not going to stand in the way of his death wish. And he signs off on it. And so Ted Roosevelt, who was 56 years old on the day in question, stricken with rheumatism, already having survived multiple heart attacks, and he was the first man out of the first landing craft on Utah Beach. Everyone who encountered him that morning agreed on 2 things. 1, he was the guy running the whole operation, and 2, they fully expected him to get killed at any moment. Hobbling around with his cane in one hand and his pistol in the other, and let's turn to his Medal of Honor citation for the rest of the story. Quote, "For gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty on 6 June 1944 in France. After 2 verbal requests to accompany the leading elements in the Normandy invasion had been denied, General Roosevelt's written request for this mission was approved, and he landed with the first wave of the forces assaulting the enemy-held beaches. He repeatedly led groups from the beach over the seawall and established them inland. His valor, courage, and presence in the very front of the attack, and his complete unconcern at being under heavy fire, inspired the troops to heights of enthusiasm and self-sacrifice. Although the enemy had the beach under constant direct fire, General Roosevelt moved from one locality to another, rallying men around him, directed and personally led them against the enemy. Under his seasoned, precise, calm, and unfaltering leadership, assault troops reduced beach strongpoints and rapidly moved inland with minimum casualties. He thus contributed substantially to the successful establishment of the beachhead in France," closed quote. After the Normandy landings were over, Ted Roosevelt's superiors were so impressed with his performance that day, they decided to make him a 2-star general and give him command of his own infantry division. But his sketchy ticker caught up with him before an enemy bullet ever did, and he died in France of a massive heart attack barely 5 weeks after D-Day. On the day of his funeral, the men who carried his casket all outranked him, and their names included Patton, Bradley, and Collins. He rests today in the American Cemetery in Normandy, atop those same cliffs he was so instrumental in securing on the morning of 6 June 1944. So if you ever make it by there, please do pay General Roosevelt a visit, and kindly give him a salute from me. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we defeat more siege layers by 9 a.m. than most armies do all day. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. So let's talk about the January 6th committee, shall we? And yes, I'm going to throw up scare quotes each time I say January 6th committee, because in an age when nearly everything else is fake, we've now taken the next logical step of having fake congressional committees, which are not lawfully constituted under the rules of the legislative body in which they originate. But hey, if you just all show up and keep pretending to have hearings and you remain really, really committed to the performance, like for several months, then eventually it becomes real, right? And then you can tell the FBI to go arrest a guy for ignoring your fake subpoenas, and they'll just do it? What a country, right? So the January 6th committee, supposedly they are doing some sort of primetime TV extravaganza this week, which will probably be watched by a grand total of around 47 people. But don't tell that to the fake members of the fake committee, because they are operating in the belief that they're going to take down the bad, awful, very, very, very bad orange man once and for all. And by take down, they of course mean we need to keep Donald Trump off of the ballot in 2024, because otherwise he's going to drop a really incredibly humiliating ass-kicking on whatever hapless, doomed opponent we decide to put up against him, up to and including the current president of the United States, such as he is. The Democrats, plus Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, but I repeat myself, they do not want any part of living in a world where they've lost 2 elections to Donald Trump. And who knows, when history renders its final verdict, maybe the record will reflect that they actually lost to Donald Trump 3 times. And that'll really break their brains, won't it? That shit could get pretty freaking ugly. They'll probably be diving in front of cars at that point on a daily basis. We'll all have to put cow catchers on the front of our vehicles, maybe. I see you laughing, but we have had far more things turn into reality in this decade that we didn't think were going to be real. But I like to think the fake January 6th committee, I like it more the more I see it. I think it's pretty nice that these awful, awful bastards, for them to put on a stunt that provides us with such a powerful object lesson in how impossibly divorced they are from any connection to the real world and the real people that live in it. The people on this fake-ass committee and the dipshit fake news performance artist retards who are pretending to cover these fake hearings, they all believe, quite fervently in fact, that you, the American people, in the summer of 2022, you spend all your days obsessing over some silly riot at the Capitol building that happened 516 days ago. If these people had any practical connection to the real world or any of the people in it, they might realize, as the rest of us realize, that if you walk up to the average American and ask him what he thinks about January 6th, he wouldn't have any idea what you were talking about. He probably has forgotten altogether about the fact that some drunk rednecks farted on Nancy Pelosi's desk that day, and the guy with the furry horn helmet wandered around making strangely unintelligible vocal noises, which, now that I think about it, makes him about as well qualified for the presidency as the man who currently occupies the office. There is literally not one single actual person in the real world who gives a fathom of a shadow of a vestige of a good goddamn about the events of January 6th, with one exception. Because a lot of us would genuinely very much like to know how a Capitol police officer can fatally shoot an unarmed citizen without warning from a concealed position and have his actions adjudicated as lawful, and face absolutely no professional consequences for it. And I am even willing to say that if the January 6th committee cared about examining the circumstances surrounding the death of Ashley Babbitt, with a mind to establishing criminal culpability if such a finding were warranted, then I would be happy to sit here before you right now and say I think this fake committee has a legitimate purpose. It is not just a lazy political headhunting expedition. And it would be nice to be able to say that, but I can't say it, because there isn't one single bastard on that fake committee who cares for one moment why Ashley Babbitt is dead, or that she's dead, or why her husband is a widow, or why her kids are orphans. And hey, Adam Kinzinger, you love to cry about things. How about you muster up a few fake tears for Ashley Babbitt's kid? Is that too much to ask? I thought so. But Ashley Babbitt's death, and the strange lack of consequences for her killer, that's not the only mystery regarding the events of 6 January 2021. In fact, if this fake committee were a real committee and its members were engaged in a legitimate effort to uncover the truth, rather than a self-evidently cynical attempt to deprive the American people of the opportunity to return Donald Trump to the White House, there's more than a few things that do warrant robust investigation, Ashley Babbitt's death being only one of them. For example, we still don't know how many FBI agents and FBI intel assets were involved, either on the ground or online, in facilitating and fomenting the behavior that we witnessed. And we still, a year and a half later, don't have any idea who Ray Epps is or what the hell he was doing on the night of 5 January when he was scurrying all over Washington telling crowd after crowd, come on guys, we need to go into the Capitol tomorrow, not just up to it, into it, come on guys. And yes, obvious Fed is obvious. It wasn't an accident that each time he tried this, he was told to fuck off and get lost and stop being such an obvious Fed. So how many Republican senators and congressmen do we have? And Ray Epps is still a total mystery? The guy who spent 5 January trying with all his might to light the fuse of 6 January? So are we just supposed to forget about all that stuff and move on with our lives? Is this the point where they start scoffing and saying, oh, that was a year and a half ago. You don't have anything better to think about, you crazy conspiracy theorist? Now, what I mean to say is, if right now I was speaking directly to Nancy Pelosi and her gaggle of hand-selected lapdogs on that ridiculous fake committee, here's what I think I might say. How stupid are you? Seriously, you think you can revisit January 6th and only focus on the things you like, the things that are rhetorically convenient for your side? You think by throwing all the non-lapdog Republicans off of the committee, you think you can engineer a version of this thing that only comes off bad looking for Donald Trump? Because I got a spoiler alert for you. You can't. You're not that smart, and you're sure as hell not that talented. Moreover, sometimes when you refuse to ask an obvious question that everybody has in their head, when you try to suppress and silence and censor it, you just wind up making it louder. Personally, for my part, I can think of quite a few questions regarding the events of 6 January 2021 that I would love to know the answers to. Number one, why was the most heavily armed cordon of police stationed on the outermost perimeter? I am not a fancy tactical expert, but it seems like that's pretty freaking backwards. Number two, why has over 80% of the security cam footage from the hours in question still not been disclosed to the public? Number three, why were there Capitol Police officers holding the doors open and encouraging people to come inside the building? Why were they having friendly interactions with Chewbacca Man and his buddies inside the Senate chamber? Number four, exactly how many insurrectionists almost raped AOC when she was hiding under a desk 2 blocks down the street? I did a video that same day. It was episode number 51, and I continue to stand behind my initial reactions. Right from the start, there was something about it that felt just a little bit too contrived and too stage managed, like someone had set out to create exactly the sort of footage that wound up getting created. And now we're 6 months out from the midterm election, and they're taking all that footage and the fake committee they've built up around it and turning the whole thing into the most cynically depraved political ad campaign since the invention of the motion picture. Here's how the Democrats picture this thing playing out. They think they're going to put on such a great show with this January 6th television extravaganza that you're going to forget Joe Biden is demonstrably, conclusively, the absolute worst president in history. And then you're going to forget that you're living in a country that was energy independent when the current president assumed office, but where you're now paying $6 or $7 a gallon for gasoline. And then you're going to forget about the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, the most embarrassing own goal by any major world power in the last 80 years minimum, where we left behind $85 billion worth of weapons and vehicles and equipment just for good measure, and then droned a family of 10 on our way out the door just for extra good measure. And then you're going to forget about the fact that your baby went hungry. Lots and lots of American children went hungry, while Joe Biden shipped all the available baby formula down to the border for the illegal aliens to use. And then you're going to forget that Joe Biden kept the schools shut down for most of 2 years, not because there was any credible medical or scientific reason for ever doing so, but because the teachers decided they like laying around in their jammies all day and getting paid their full salary for it. And then you're going to forget that Joe Biden randomly blurted out that, Vladimir Putin needs to be removed from power in Russia, apparently unaware that if that actually happened, it would mean a repeat of the Russian Civil War of 1917, but with the fun added wrinkle that both sides would now have nuclear weapons. And that's just great work, Joe. Keep saying every single thought that crosses your mind. Just please give us 12 hours to say our goodbyes before you decide to trigger nuclear Armageddon. Please? There have been rumors swirling around the fake news media toilet bowl these past couple days that Joe is fighting mad about the conduct of his subordinates. He's angry as hell and he's not going to take it anymore. He's had just about enough of having his words walked back by some youthful underling in the comms department who wasn't even born yet when Joe was starting his 4th term in the Senate. And before you start doing the math in your head, let me save you the trouble. Joe would have started his 4th term in January of 97, so that staffer is 25 years old right now. This fake January 6th committee is going to grab you by the ankles, pick you up, turn you upside down, and shake all recollection of Joe Biden's incompetence and corruption completely out of your memory banks. You won't remember how he wrecked the economy or threw the border open. Hell, you won't even remember when he called you a filthy racist, at least a dozen times. But still, you will forget all of that. Joe is going to slip you a Mickey, just like the Mickey that the wizard slipped to Dorothy when he needed to knock her ass out for a good long time. When you wake up, you'll be walking a little bit bow-legged, but don't pay any attention to that. That's a common side effect of this medication. The important thing is, when you wake up, you won't remember anything about Joe Biden's awful, disastrous, calamity-strewn presidency. All you're going to remember is how bad and mean that orange man is. How it was absolutely imperative that we get rid of that man and his mean tweets. How the country has prospered immeasurably since we installed Joe Biden as the new steady hand on the tiller, the man who's going to restore civility, whose decades of experience will help us traverse the storm-tossed waters of 21st century geopolitics, the man who's going to bring decency back to our political discourse. Oh, and you're also going to forget about when he took a dump on the Pope and farted on the Duchess of Cornwall, because this man, he is pure class and decorum. Joe Biden would never humiliate his country on the world stage, just like his son, Hunter Biden, Nelson on the Delaware, America's greatest naval hero, would never snort a chunk of Parmesan cheese out of the carpet in the hopes that it might actually be a tiny nugget of crack. And he would never bang his dead brother's widow less than a week after the funeral, allegedly. And he would never do lines of coke off his niece's boobs, allegedly. And he wouldn't run around knocking up random strippers while his dad was in the middle of running for president. And there's no allegedly on that one. That one's actually a matter of public record. And on that wholesome, savory note, now that I feel like I need to take a shower to wash the Biden family sleaze and filth off of myself, let's leave it there for tonight. Now that everyone's got a really lovely taste in their mouth, no pun intended. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I will see you Wednesday. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.